accurate. So they are going to share a practical tips on choosing the right hematology analyzer, and you understand what to look for and why it matters for your laboratory. So we'll start without further ado. We'll start. Yes, Mr. Abhinav Thakur, over to you. We'll start the topics.
So thank you, Aditi, and it's great to have Dr. Elizabeth Frank here with
Thank you.
us. Thank you, welcome. Because she's not only from the academic background, also she's actually been from the business background. So very few people are there in the industry who have done both academic and business. So Dr. Frank has been in the international circle for biochemistry. She's been part of at various forums of just mute. Hold on. Yeah. So I met her at various forums like in the USA, ACC, in Europe, in IFCC, and also she is running her own business. So she knows from the theory part and the practical part also. So a lot of times the instruments are prepared for the scientist, but they're not prepared for commercial use. So also commercially, she has tried and tested as she's running her own lab. So like a lot of people over here on the call who are running their own pathology labs, she will be able to share a lot of insights which are coming from practical experience of running a laboratory and also by attending various exhibitions all over India, ACBI, or be it in US or be it in Europe, and learning about the new technologies and what is happening. So with that, we wanted to start our first Lab Insights webinar because we feel that there is a lot of need for awareness for laboratory medicine in India. Like, for example, you have heard of American Association of Clinical Chemistry or IFCC in Europe, which is the go-to place for setting up different guidelines when it comes to the diagnostics. However, in India, we still don't have a central body. ICMR, you must have seen during COVID, was setting up the guidelines. So we feel there's a lot of awareness to be created in the industry, and a lot of times when people are starting their first lab, the first thing they start with is a semi-automatic and CBC three part. So semi-automatic chemistry analyzer, there is a lot of information already available in the market, right? It has been there for a very long time. About CBC is still a little more expensive instrument, right? And it is more complicated than a semi-automatic analyzer. And the differences in the platelet count makes a very big difference to the therapy, to the doctor, to the patient. So that's why we decided, for the basic labs who are starting off, right? Like even at one time, Dr. Frank also was starting her own lab. So she has gone through the experience that a lot of people over here have gone through or are going to go through. And what to look for a CBC three part, right? When you start off, you go start looking on the internet, you start asking some other labs, what are they using? So what is the basic thing so that you don't make an expensive mistake of buying the wrong instrument? For example, I had met one pathologist once, and he had just graduated and he was starting his own lab first. He's a very popular pathologist, and he was telling this story, Dr. Sanjay Aroda, if you have all heard, the person of Suburban Diagnostics. So he was starting off his own laboratory, and he at that time did not know about the instruments much, so he thought I'll import the instrument directly. So he imported the machine directly. However, he could not get service here, and because of that, he was under a lot of stress because new pathologist started a new lab, and it is expensive machines he has imported from outside India, and the service was not available, and he was very unwell. Actually, he felt unwell because of that. And that's how, yeah, it's so important, especially when you are starting a new lab, because this money is very difficult for you. You have borrowed it from people or you have taken a loan from the bank and you're starting a lab. So it is very important to make the right decision and to buy the right instrument so that your future starts off in a good way and you can continue to grow in the diagnostic industry. So that is the reason we have started with the basic of three-part CBC, and that is the entry point for a lot of labs starting off, or a lot of labs looking for a replacement of the three-part. And when they're going for a replacement, what they should look for, in the next instrument that they're going to buy. So that is how we will be taking this forward. So with that, I would like to get insight from Dr. Frank on there are different criterias when selecting an instrument, right? So from your experience, what has it been like? Why accuracy and precision is the most important when choosing a CBC analyzer? Because we know that the diagnostic plays a very important role and 70% of decisions are made on diagnostic reports. But in CBC analyzer, why it becomes even more critical for the accuracy and precision?
First of all, Abhinav, congratulations on this lovely move to start Accurex Lab Insights podcast. If there is one thing that is lacking in lab medicine today, is real insights. What we find, like you rightly said, a lot of things are bought and sold, but very little is really discussed about what is the baseline that is required to go ahead and to be good lab medicine professionals as well as good business people. Because if the labs don't do well, they will cut corners and that will affect patient outcomes. So coming to your first question, you said, why is accuracy and precision so important when choosing a CBC analyzer? Um, Medicine per se has gone a long way, and so has lab medicine. But one of the constants that have remained over the years has been a CBC test. I know that we are talking about you go now, you have what you call aggregators telling you they'll give you 200 tests in 20 minutes for X number of rupees. But at the core of diagnostics, what is still very important is a CBC. With a simple CBC, a doctor can make very clear cut and sometimes life saving diagnosis, which will affect patient outcomes. So, accuracy, hence, in a three-part analyzer becomes key. Now, if your CBC is inaccurate, all right. When I mean accurate, what am I looking at? See, we grew up, even today, when I hire somebody for my lab, I first ask them, do you know how to do a manual CBC? Because I'm so scared that if I need a cross check and if they do not know how to do it, it's going to be worrisome. So, what is my next backup? A good machine that will count the cells as closely, as accurately as possible to the standard reference method. Okay, so this is the backbone of diagnosis. Now, what is precision? The machine reads a sample once, and then I read it after 10 minutes. If it's going to give me a 50,000 platelet once and a 1.5 lakh platelet next time, it's not going to work. What am I going to report? So we both precision and accuracy. Accuracy is the right result against standard methodologies, and precision is repeatability. I do it n number of times. I get a value within this CV percentage. So I think these things, how are accuracy and precisions managed by automated instrument or a three-part analyzer? It depends on the algorithms that are built in. So if the algorithms are really robust and are built in very logically, then you will consistently get accurate result and precise results.
True, true. That's extremely true, especially nowadays with a lot of infectious disease season also going on right now with malaria and dengue, and it becomes extremely important to have the right precise
And
results.
I would say it's hands down the most accurately needed diagnosis is a CBC.
Yes,
You know,
that's
even if you don't have a high-end testing, if you get a CBC, you can more or less know how to treat the patient. So I think that's
very
key,
true.
and a good CBC machine will make a difference there.
That's true. Extreme. That's absolutely right. So in the same lines, like the results are extremely important. But what I've seen is now, like during the monsoons in India, the requirement suddenly goes up. Like we have seen, like during the monsoons, suddenly the inquiries will increase many-fold for CBC, and the workload goes up tremendously. And there are a lot of new labs that open up during this time. So coming to that, so we also see like suddenly the throughput requirement goes up, the turnaround time requirement goes up. So this also is an important factor in selecting a CBC analyzer. So what is your opinion on how do throughput and your turnaround time, your TAT time influence the lab operations. We know it's an important factor, but from the practical point of view, well, if you don't have a high throughput or high turnaround time, so how will it affect the lab operations or the patient also?
Yeah, so when we talk about throughput here, even small labs, like I understand we are talking about a three-part analyzer, but many large labs also do have three-part analyzers and have multiple three-part analyzers. So whether it's a small lab which is doing 20 samples, 30 samples a day, or if you're looking at a lab that is 100 or 150 samples a day, you want the result to come out quickly. So how much time after I feed in the sample will I get the report? Number one. Number two, we are looking at it. In an hour, how many samples can I clear? So pretty much throughput is it directly affects your lab's efficiency. Now, sometimes what happens is when people talk about machines, they'll tell you that it will give you a throughput of X number of tests. But in reality, when you take these machines, you'll find that they don't exactly give you 60 tests per hour or 70 tests per hour. It will sometimes be as less as 15 or 20 because there will be some startup cycle, shutdown cycle, in between cycle. So it's important for us to know when we buy. When they means when a vendor says 60 tests per hour, will I really get 60 tests per hour? So that is extremely important because, of course, I know we do make patients wait, but this is a time of everyone wants a report like yesterday. If they give the sample within the next 5 minutes, they want the reports. And if you can give it, why not? Especially with the CBC, where you don't have to wait for a sample to get to clot or to be centrifuged. I think that should also be for the labs, USP saying that I will give the report early if it's a CBC. I'm not going to make you wait. So your throughput and your how many fast you can turn around the patients is a key factor. So you need to look at a CBC machine that won't get clogged when the sample load increases, like especially in the rainy season. It's okay when you're doing 10 samples, 20 samples a day, but when it goes to 100 samples, the machine goes on pause, then it becomes a problem. So these are key issues in deciding what machine you need to buy.
So my the next question is related to this one, this particular reply that you gave about the clogging part, right? So that is very important when it comes to the CBC. So also, like when we are selecting an analyzer for a lab, like the ease of use and the maintenance part is also very important. And what should the labs consider, regarding the ease of use and the maintenance part, so they don't have that downtime when suddenly the workload goes up. And also now we have the RFID CBC analyzers, which can read the RFID reagent packs. Also now, instead of the three reagent systems, the two reagents have come in. So these are like some ways the ease of using the machine is coming in. But from the practical side, because you have run a lab for so many years, more than 20 years, and from the maintenance point of view, like what should the labs do when they're considering buying a new instrument or for the ease of using the machine instrument?
There are two things here. I've always said that when you buy a machine, you get into a relationship with a company. So if you're buying a machine from a company that is not stable, you're buying trouble. Okay. And I say this generally because having run labs for close to 20 to 30 years, I know that sometimes you tend to buy something because it is cheap. But cheap then lands you up in a lot of problems because you do not get the required support and service. Now, one of the things I like in an instrument is it should take care of as many pre-analyticals as possible. So reading of the barcodes being read by a machine, RFID recognition of the reagents become key to, again, it goes back to accuracy, it goes back to patient outcomes. Two, maintenance is two-pronged. The lab has to maintain the machine and the company has to give the support. So very often we expect support from the company. We expect them to do magic, but we don't take care of the machine. And then we blame the company and say, that, oh, it's not working, this is not working, that is not working. So I think maintenance of a machine is primarily the responsibility of the lab, in the sense that we do what the company tells us to do. Okay, you have to take care, you have to make sure that dust doesn't settle, you you have to make sure that your sample is not clotted. But even if things like that happen, then what you need to do is, that you can go back to the company, ask them for help. So there's another aspect to maintenance, is training. So sometimes we buy a machine and we don't want anybody to train us from the company. It is absolutely necessary that whoever is using the machine has to go through the training as prescribed by the vendor. So then that, okay, this is the steps they have asked me to do, this is what I will do. Does that mean you'll never have a breakdown? No, it's a machine, you will have problems. And when you do have problems, because you have a relationship with the company, you can get back to them. Secondly, since these machines are also made in a manner that is easy to interact, easy to understand, and easy to use, if you follow protocol, generally you will not run into trouble. You should not abuse your equipments, please. And I have seen technicians and people in the lab do it. And hence I am saying this upfront, that sometimes you can have the best of equipment sitting with you, and just because of shortcuts, you won't use the lice, you won't use the detergent, you will not do the whatever the stepwise thing that is recommended, and then it will affect how your lab runs. So I think adhering to simple protocols of maintenance and taking advantage of machines that are easy to use, I think we can give better patient outcomes.
True, true. Very well said. And I think that's like a lot of wisdom in that thing, that, the instrument is just not a transaction. It's actually a relationship you're building, because it's going to be some with you for, more than 5 years. So you should not just look at that as a transaction, but a relationship you're starting with a company, which is going to continue for a very long time. So it's very important to make the right decision. And training of the lab technicians, or the technical staff that is going to be using the instruments, that is extremely important. So we will also take that back as Accurex, and put more focus on training the technicians, so that they can maintain the instrument well, and there is less clogging, or there's less other breakdowns which are happening in the instrument. Now coming to the part of cost effectiveness, because we know in India, cost is very important, because most of the time the patients are actually paying out of pocket, and insurance does not cover a diagnostic test like it covers in some other countries. The government does cover the diagnostic test, but in private it's all out of pocket expense. So cost effectiveness also is important in India. So how should labs evaluate cost effectiveness of a CBC analyzer? Both in the short term and long term.
See, there are, when you buy anything for that matter, okay, if you go for cheap, then it won't last long. Am I right? Okay,
Yes.
if you go for something, okay, I'm not saying uh, everything that is cheap is not good, but generally you pay a cost, because when people will sell you a cheap machine, and then the reagents may not be available, then the quality control may not be available, or you may not get calibration materials, or the needle quality will not be good, or there could be 100 things. The boards may conk off in a certain period of time, and then in a less in a quite fast. So when you look at costs, you have to look at the overall costs, which includes, am I getting a good system? When I mean good, what am I looking at? Does it have a good, like we discussed, accuracy, precision, throughput, turnover time, downtime, what is the support I will get from the company? And then you have to constantly divide always your cost as your capital cost and your running costs. Okay, your capital cost is an investment. It is, you can't take it as a cost, it is an investment. So you think of it as a investment you're making. Like you buy a house, that's an investment. Okay, but you'll still need to paint, you'll still need to tighten the taps, you'll still need to do stuff inside the house daily, right? Okay, so that's pretty much the analogy. So what we need to do is get a reliable system, and then when you count your working costs, what are the costs that you have to take in mind? Reagents, consumables. In CBCs, the consumables are minimal. There's barely anything. Even the reagent cost per se, when you look at a CBC test and what is being charged, by any stretch of imagination, you will not run on a loss. In fact, it helps you to do the test faster, and the return on investment is good where a CVC machine is concerned. Unlike many other instruments, or maybe a higher, what you call a 5-part or so, if there you have to see how many samples you're doing. But if you have a basic workload of 10 to 15 samples per day, okay, you comfortably can go into a CBC machine and make sure that there is a balance, and it's not going to burn you, and it's going to save you on time, give you the accuracy that's required. Lesser manpower you will need when you're not doing it manually, so because only the flat samples get picked up and go in for peripheral smears. Okay, so I think when we invest, you should always see on one thing: is my investment sustainable? So I'm
Yeah.
not investing something and then losing daily. I'm investing well, so that every day I, the choice of a good investments brings a return on my investment.
Yes, extremely, again, great pearl of wisdom that it's an investment to look at it, not an expense. Because it's like buying a house, right? You buy a house which is of a good quality, then you don't end up on spending on the leakages which are happening, or the different things which are breaking down. So it's a good way to look at it as a long-term investment, and building a relationship, and looking at the running cost and the working cost together. Now, coming to a part which plays a very important role for even companies like us, diagnostic companies, and even for our customers or the patient, is that the customer support and service, which I feel plays a very important part in choosing an instrument. Because if you have the best instrument in the world, but you're not able to service it, the instrument is not going to work. The downtime is not going to be shorter, it's going to be longer. So customer support in terms of application or service, I feel plays the most important part in diagnostics, because of the patient cannot wait, right? We cannot have a downtime. So from your experience of more than 30 years of running a lab, would any anecdotes or any experiences you can share, and why is customer support a critical factor in selecting an analyzer? Or is it the most critical factor in selecting an analyzer also? What is your opinion on this?
I would say it's a most critical factor for many reasons. Okay, when you set up a lab, okay, I've set several. So there is this euphoria of getting things done, getting a new instrument, starting. You don't give attention to detail. And from a customer's point of view, one of the things you need to give attention to detail is a service contract. Okay, your relation starts with the transaction. Okay, the transaction has to be properly evaluated by both sides. The company will tell you, I will do this, I will give you this kind of support, and you need to have it written down, because people come, people go, processes and contracts stay in place. So a basic, I would say, a proper contract, which ensures from the lab side that you have a commitment from the company that I am going to make sure that I will see that the installation is done properly. I will see that the training is done properly. I will give you support based on these criteria. Okay, I might give you a support for 6 months, and later you might have to get into an AMC with me, but everything goes down. Okay, what would be what are the consumables that I will need to replace, say in 1 year's time, 6 years' time? Because at the end of the day, it's like your car. If the tire wears out, you have to change the tire. You can't say tire is worn out, I will run like that only. You will get into trouble, right? So all these things should be discussed upfront with the company, and you make a list. Ask the company, what are the probable expenses I will have in terms of part replacement or tubing or these kind of things in 1 year's time, if my workload is say 50 samples per day or 100 samples a day. And then you have all these included in your service contract. So that would be one of the key things. But having said that, over the years, I have interacted with different companies, and I don't want to name names here. And I have seen companies go far and beyond contracts, because in the process of buying an equipment, you've got to know the people, you've got to know the company, you've got to know the company's values. And I've had people, especially when I started, see, I started a lab way back in late 90s, and there were very few, one, doctor run labs, number two, accredited labs at that point of time. I was the first small lab in the country to go for accreditation. It was the 101 days. And I remember I could not afford to have a backup machine. And I'm sure a lot of people cannot afford to have another backup machine. So my lifeline was the companies who supported me. There were times, I live in a smaller town, so there were no resident engineers there. But if I did give a call, they would travel 3 hours and make sure they got there in the evening, worked with me through the night, and morning I was up and ready to go. So I'm very grateful for that kind of relationships that were built up, service support that have been given. And so I would put this as paramount, because they are machines will give trouble, machines can break down. So customer service and interaction with the company, I think, is absolutely important when you to consider when you buy a machine.
Yes, I think extremely well said, especially the point, that people come, people go, but processes and contracts stay. Because a lot of times, customers say that, oh, no, no, but this was told to me, this was told to me. But in the end, that maybe that person has even retired, he's not in the company anymore. So then we are like, but, this it's not there in the contract, or it's not there in the process. So it's a very well said point that, that we all are not permanent, right? We all are here for a short while. So, but processes and contracts are there forever. So we should always focus on the getting the right contracts and the right processes in place. So that's true. And now coming to the part about, after you have bought the machine, you're using the machine, you're happy with it. How do you go ahead with maintaining the machine efficiency, right? So after 1 year, after 2 years, like, should you take an AMC for the machine? Because a lot of times customers might think, no, why should I take an AMC? It is running fine for 1 year. It is running fine for 2 years. I will call, my neighborhood engineer and get it up and running, or I will get it done from a third party. So how important is, maintenance of the machine, and how would you say, like, the customers or the labs can maintain the machines in a much better way by routine cleaning, calibration, or any other experience you've had over the last 30 years of, maintenance of various instruments, and especially CBC analyzers in your lab? Like, what are the best practices?
Okay. To begin with, the first point I would make is, one of the things even till date, when I walk into the lab and I see dust at the work table, it gets me angry. It might seem as a very stupid, silly things, but I feel that your machine first has to be kept clean, which most people, and I can say this across our country, because I've been to small labs to big labs. You'll find samples thrown around, dust around, tissues around, just that basic maintenance of I think our workplace is important. It kind of feels sad, because we grow up with things like, we have place of worship and we have place of work. We take care of places of worship, but we neglect the places of work. And I think that personal responsibility of our work desk, of it being clean, of I'm not saying we have to have AC everywhere, but I think every day we can clean. I walk in and I've asked my technician, will you be able to sit here? And if this was your dining table, would you eat here? So I think cleanliness is a must in the lab, both for uh, safety of the people who are working and for the safety of the machines. Take care of simple things like dust. Don't be careless about mixing your EDTA tube. This is where machines get completely messed up, because simple thing, when blood is being drawn, EDTA samples are not mixed properly, and then you feed, you have clogging. Okay, so sometimes it's the simple things that make a big difference. It's not a big thing. Now if the company says you have to use a lice, or I mean cleansing solution once a day, do it. It's not a cost, it will save you in the long run. uh, if there are updates to be done, software updates, do it. Use technology. If it has an alias, use the alias. If it has of course there are you have to do your recommended cleaning and calibration daily. When it comes to um, repairs, okay, fidgeting with the instrument when you don't know the instrument is a mess, because even if you think you may have solved the solution for now, you do not know what setting has gone wrong or what calibration has gone wrong. Now there is a fundamental problem with CBCs, is hematology controls are very expensive, so you have to have another way to work out, like maybe the Bull's algorithm or whatever, to make sure that your machines are working properly. So in case there is a problem, now if you have a good service contract, or if you have a good company that is supporting you, please do not tamper with the machine. Ask the engineers to come and look at it, sort it out. Now if your response time is delayed, then you need to pull the company up and say, okay, I lost so much time, why is it? But before you call the company, please ensure that you are following um, whatever is recommended by them properly. Now, one of the things I always tell my staff, and for 30 years I've maintained it, I will only call the company if there is a serious breakdown. But I will not allow my staff to break protocol which causes harm to the machine, and then go call the company and say, okay, now you fix it. So I think lot is in the hands of the lab. But having said that, there is also what is called as maintenance. Now, when you have your bike or your scooter or your car, okay, you don't wait for it to break down, right? You will change the oil. You will make sure that it has petrol, right? You're not going to tilt the tank till it's over so it sucks in air, and then you have an airlock in your car. You're not going to go to the mechanic after that, right? So similarly with the machine, do not overstretch the machine. Make sure that there is regular periodic servicing that is done by the company people. It helps in the longevity of the life of the instrument. You will have lesser breakdowns. You will have lesser need to change the parts. You will have lesser downtime, because in case some part is wearing, the engineer has already seen it and corrected. So you're not waiting for a complete breakdown and lose business of 2-3 days before the parts come in and you correct. So I think planning maintenance is a key thing in keeping your lab running regularly, and that will also relieve you of a lot of stress and make sure operations are smooth.
Excellent. So you're right. It's the small things that become
Make a big
snowball, the
difference.
big difference. So there's a saying, like, the way you do small things is the way you do everything. So this dust thing, we might think it's a very small thing, but like
No.
I've been to Japan many times, and during my visits in Japan, I've never seen dust anywhere in their houses, in the offices, in the factory, nowhere. It's so clean. They say that even if the food falls down, you can still eat it over
We
there.
created. That's right.
Right. So, and if you see, that's why Japanese quality is the best in the world. So if you look at any product coming from Japan, so it is that, yeah, dust on the machine might sound like a very, small thing, but that's how the culture builds up and that's how everything else comes out then. So that's a very good litmus test to see, how the maintenance is going on.
Believe me, I still lose my head after 30 years when I walk into the lab and I see a table dirty.
Yes, yes. Then you will love Japan. You should go there more often. Yes. So it's an very good point, that's as an auditor or even like as a lab owner or someone who's running the lab to look at these small things and then get into, the other things like calibration and controls, AMCs, maintenance. That's true. So I know you have a short time, you have another meeting shortly. So I will just like to thank you a lot for coming. We'll take a
Not at all.
couple of questions, and I hope this series will help the labs to make
I
the
do
right
have another five,
decision.
10 minutes, Abhinav. I can
Okay,
hang in
okay.
there. Questions.
Fine, good. So I hope this series of us will help the labs to make the right decision, especially the labs which are starting off on like which CBC analyzer to buy. It's your hard-earned money and you want to put it in the right place. So this will help you. And not only that, but also in running the labs, how to take the lab forward and to run the lab forward and to run the CBC analyzer so that, you get the best results and your lab operations run smoothly. Just on since we have a little bit more time, so just another question which I would like to ask. Like a lot of people who are here are running the labs, so they are starting labs, and like how you were started 3 decades ago, 30 years ago, like in a small lab, smaller city of India, and you have grown your business, your laboratory business, and also you have grown as a person also in your various fields like ACC, IFCC, or even accreditation. But coming to the lab business, since you've been in it for so long, like what is the advice you would like to give the other lab owners who are here and running the labs on how to grow their business? Because very often when I meet them, they say too much competition, too much competition. There are so many players, and these small labs are coming up because there's no license required in India to open a lab. In
Absolutely.
most of the states, some of the states is there, and then there's competition from bigger chains. So, like, where do we go? So what is your advice for them to increase their business and to get more customers and to, do more CBC test?
To begin with, I would say, okay, I think we should all work at legislation that there has to be some amount of basic legislations that is required for running a lab, because we are not selling carpets. We are dealing with life. And I think life has value. And hence, um, whoever is in the diagnosis business is to first recognize that we are part of the healthcare system, and patient outcomes is um, is very important. I was just reading about William Oslo. If you're a physician, you will know him. He's written the book for practice of medicine. What is that? Principles and Practice of Medicine is a book written by him, and he says, as medical practitioners, we have to at least we have to have this kind of thing that it's not only to see what we can get out of life, but it is what we can add to life. And I think that is the true success of diagnostics, because your science has to be correct, which means you cannot compromise, you cannot cut corners on testing. No jugad, no saying I will cut corners, because you're dealing with life. It could be your life, it could be people whom you know and people whom you don't know. And I think as medical professionals, we owe it to give the correct reports. Number two, when you give the proper reports, just the way you have a relationship with your vendors, you start creating your relationship with your client, your patients. I tell you, some of the best relationships I've developed over the years are with my patients. Why? Because they trust me. They know I will not mess up a report. And if something, I think something is wrong, I will not worry whether I'm repeating the test the second time. I will do it, but I will guarantee a right report. So the way to improve, increase a business, especially in an era where we have aggregators and big names who have come, and you have this syndrome where big fish eat small fish. All the small labs, they want to eat up. Okay, I still believe that if you as a small lab can give value, not numbers. Okay, you're not giving some CBC numbers, you're giving value. When I mean value, what is it? You are giving the patient a right report, you are treating the patient with empathy, you're developing a relationship with the patient, you're developing trust with the patient will always come back to you. Google medicine, idiot syndrome will all run its time. And India is still a country where uh, most of our labs are scattered. There are few chains, yes, but people still prefer to go to the neighborhood clinic and the neighborhood laboratory. So let's set a standard. Let's make it a place where they feel welcome to come. Let it be clean. Let it be tidy. Let people be speak to them well. Let people know the subject so they are able to answer their questions. Let's give time. Let's put the human heart back into the practice of medicine.
Yes, yes. I think that's a very good point for the labs to take, because that relationship that you have developed with the customer, that is not possible for a lab chain to do at all,
Not at all.
right? So
Not
lab
at all.
chain can only, say that, okay, I have this offer, I have this package. And if the patient wants to talk to someone, there's no one to talk to except the phlebotomist, right, taking the sample.
And in any case, when they sell you 200 tests for a song, the doctors also get irritated because it's pages and pages of pages and pages of reports, which doesn't make sense to anybody. So
Yes,
people will prefer to go to a local doctor, a local lab, but give them value. Don't compromise.
true, true. So it's very
Treat them
important.
like how you would want them, how you would want to be treated when you go to a hospital.
Right, right. Yeah, it's very important. You're right. And I think this can be a very big thing for the labs who are attending here, that this is how we feel like, chain labs. But then the big advantage is that you can build that relationship with customers, which chain lab is not able to do. And for that, you'll have to be out also in the front, right, in the reception, and not only in the lab doing the testing, right, or on the microscope. Also spend time with customers and get to know them and help them when they have any doubts, right? So I think
I
that is
used
a
to
very
all
important.
I used to always say this: the sample you get in is not just an SID number; it's
Yes.
a person.
As a person, right? And I think that will be a very big differentiator for the labs, how to change for how they can like compete, increase their customer workload, and retain the customers compared to like the larger chain labs is big by building a good relationship with the doctors and the patients. True. So with that, I'll just take up some questions if any questions have come in. So Dipti, you have been monitoring the questions in the chat. You can
Yes.
take up.
Yeah. So I'll just take up few questions. It is by Mr. Syed. He said me, can we just elaborate on QC and calibration requirement? Like, what is the frequency of calibration, and like how the QCs, like how often we should do it?
Because you mentioned QC and CBC is expensive, right? And so how often should they do QC and calibration?
The simple way to do it, when when CBC machine is sold, they usually it comes calibrated, right, Abhinav?
Right, right.
You'll there will be calibration, and there will be a calibration frequency they give. But running a daily QC for a three-part CBC is expensive, and that's a fact. Well, one if you can manage to get a CBC vial and share it among many labs, then it works, because it's not just the expensive, the shelf life of the hematology QCs are just about 21 days. And that is the problem. It's a simple way of doing it is to do a Bull's algorithm. Okay, that's an expected. So how do what do I mean by Bull's algorithm? You take a sample that's run today, and you keep that sample and run it next day morning. So if that sample, if the values are reproducible, then your system is running within range. Okay. And this is what we did for years. This is accepted by NABL. If the labs are going for NABL accreditation, you have to maintain a Bull's algorithm. So morning sample you rerun in the evening sample you rerun it next day, and you maintain the record, and then you can see the variation, if any at all. Most good analyzers will give you standard consistent results. The other way to work around it is, say once in a month or once in 3 months, do an interlaboratory comparison, okay, by with the standard lab. Send one sample out and see if your results match. So these two would be a good way to manage costs, considering the shelf life of CBC, that's a hematology quality control, is not exactly cost efficient as I would like it to be. I would not say this for a biochemistry instrument. I would say use do QC every day. Okay.
Yeah.
Are
Okay.
you okay with that?
Yes, yes, that absolutely is very relevant, because CBC controls are very expensive. We know as a manufacturer, they are all imported into India, and the prices extremely high. So these are good ways to find a way solution to do the QC.
Yeah, one more. Thank you, Dr. Frank. And one more question is, what care to be taken by a lab on a daily while using the CBC analyzer? Like basic care, what it should be taken while using the CBC analyzer.
As advised by your vendor. Machine care has to be as per vendor's specifications. And of course, like I said, please keep the lab clean. Don't spill things there. And I would say some things, make sure you use vacutainers. When you use vacutainers, then you're taking the right amount of blood and you're using the correct amount of anticoagulant that is necessary, which means your blood won't clot if you mix properly. If the blood won't clot, it won't clog your machine. Now, one of the things I've seen in many small labs, to cut costs, people are using non-vacuum tubes. Okay, so the amount of blood drawn uh, will change. Obviously, it won't be exactly 2 ml or 2.5 ml as prescribed, which means even in the naked eye, if you don't see the clot, there could be fibrin strands. Okay, these will go and affect your machine. So I think following prescribed protocol, both in terms of lab medicine itself. So take care of your pre-analyticals, take care of your how your blood is drawn, take care of how it is mixed, take care of the things that the vendors have told you. Do this when you start the machine, do this when you shut it down, and basic environment around the machine. Keep it clean, keep it if you're not using it, cover it and keep it. Don't allow dust to settle on it. I think these would be the simple housekeeping tips that I can give you.
You're giving us a good idea. We should give, the covers for the instrument every 2 years or so the dust doesn't settle.
Yeah, but you'll be amazed at how the dust finds its way. Anyways.
Yeah. Frank, one more question is from Ms. Sayed. They're saying, what are the major risk factor in managing the CBC counter as per ISO 15189-2022? Or maybe
There are,
yeah.
see, with every instrument, okay, ISO 15189 will not give you specific risk factors compared to a instrument. Now, the ISO guidelines are guidelines how you manage your equipment. Okay, and it comes back to the same thing. When you are managing your machine, you have to follow the vendor's protocols. So for management of how we manage an equipment as per ISO is, you need to have records of usage, you need to have records of maintenance, you need to have installation reports, you need to have regular periodic maintenance reports. Now, one of the challenges when we go in for accreditation, where I have seen, even as I've consulted with a lot of laboratories, is that we want to prepare for accreditation 2 weeks before accreditation. So we are preparing all the documents, we are writing everything, we are creating documents. we are doing cut and paste. So the key thing as per ISO 15189 is that managing of the equipment has to get into your genetics. What do I mean by it has to get into your genetics? You have to do it every day, and you have to create the record every day, not 2 weeks before the assessors come. So if you do daily maintenance, monthly maintenance, daily, weekly, and monthly maintenance, and scheduled maintenance as said by the vendor, and keep a record of all this, that's all the ISO 15189 would require.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Frank. I hope Dr. Frank was able to answer your query. And one last question, Dr. Frank, is that the roller mixer is must for the sample. Can we say that as for the like to take care of the instrument?
I would prefer that.
Yes.
See, in my lab, right from day one, I've had a roller mixer next to my CBC machine. So by default, blood is drawn, it's put on the roller mixer, and it goes on to the machine.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely. So it was wonderful taking the question and answers. I think we are near the closing time, and if you have still more queries, I think Diksha has posted a form. Will love to answer all your queries with Dr. Frank later on as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Frank, for taking out time for this valuable insight about the CBC analyzer, what to take care and how to manage the instrument and what needs to be done while performing the test also, and before the like how the test to be done. So thank you, Abhinav sir, for this wonderful session. And we will love to have many more such valuable session with you. I hope all of you have take out some insight from this session, and we'll meet very often with such webinars. So it will help you to maintain the laboratory, as well as it will guide you to buy a proper equipment for your laboratory, which is very, very crucial. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Abhinav, for giving me a chance to, be a part of your Insights program. Absolutely thrilled.
Thank you.
Thank you.